The prince was coming for a drink, and I asked her to come up. The sentence was given to the American biographer Sally Bedell Smith in roughly 2023, around the time of the coronation. It was spoken by a woman named Lucia Santa Cruz, daughter of a former Chilean ambassador, friend of the young Prince of Wales, and the person who has been credited for more than 50 years with introducing Prince Charles to a woman named Camilla Shand. The sentence is significant for what it says. It is more significant for what it does not say. It does not place the meeting at Smith's Lawn Polo Ground at Windsor Great Park. It does not place it in 1970. It does not include any line about great-grandmothers or great-great-grandfathers, mistresses, or kings. In Lucia Santa Cruz's account, the account of the only person credited with making the introduction who is still living and speaking on the record, the first meeting of the future King Charles III and the future Queen Camilla took place quietly, in a low-cost London flat near Victoria Station, around a drink, in roughly the early summer of 1972. That is one version. There are at least two others, and the gap between them is the subject of this film, the event. For most love stories, the date of the first meeting is a footnote. For this one, it is not. The relationship between Charles and Camilla, begun in their early 20s, broken off, resumed, kept secret for decades, accused of contributing to the collapse of a marriage that ended in the most famous tunnel accident of the 20th century, and culminating in a coronation in 2023, has been the subject of more books than perhaps any other private relationship in modern British public life. And the books do not agree. 4 major royal biographers have written substantive accounts of the early Charles-Camilla story: Penny Junor, Tina Brown, Sarah Bradford, Sally Bedell Smith. All 4 agree that the introduction was made, in some form, by Lucia Santa Cruz, herself a previous romantic interest of the prince. All 4 agree that Camilla Shand was about 16 months older than Charles and that they were both in their early 20s. All 4 agree that an immediate rapport followed. After that, the agreement ends. The year is different. The venue is different. The famous opening line, if there even was one, is different. And the woman most often credited as the matchmaker has, in recent years, supplied her own version, which does not match any of the popular ones. This is the story of 3 of those versions, and of the small, important spaces between them. Version A, Smith's Lawn, the inside account. The most widely repeated version of the meeting, the version that appears in newspaper retrospectives, in television documentaries, and in the popular royal memory, places it at Smith's Lawn, the polo ground in Windsor Great Park, in the summer of 1970. Charles was 21 years old, freshly invested as Prince of Wales the previous summer, recently graduated from Trinity College, Cambridge. Camilla Shand had turned 23 that July. She was the daughter of an army major named Bruce Shand and an aristocratic mother named Rosalind Cubitt. She was, in the testimony of friends, witty and unaffected and entirely unawed by titles. In this version, set out most fully in Sarah Bradford's biography Diana, published in 2006, the meeting at the polo ground was instantaneous. Bradford writes that most of Prince Charles's early romances began at Smith's Lawn. She quotes friends describing the young Camilla as, in her phrase, a pretty, witty, confident blonde. She includes, attributed to a courtier of the period, the rather harsher assessment that Camilla was well organized by her mother, the kind of phrase a courtier of 1970 used when he meant something less polite. Source: Sarah Bradford, Diana, Viking, 2006. In Tina Brown's The Diana Chronicles, published the following year in 2007, the rapport at the polo ground was immediate but built on a different foundation. Brown reports that Camilla made her impression on the prince by leaning over and stroking his horse, that her warmth with the animal, in this account, was the moment Charles registered her. It is also in this version, and only in this version, that the famous opening line attaches itself. The line, as it has been quoted in countless retellings of the story, "My great-grandmother was your great-great-grandfather's mistress, so how about it?" The reference is to Alice Keppel, born 1868, died 1947, who was, for the last 12 years of King Edward VII's life, his publicly acknowledged mistress. Keppel was Camilla Shand's great-grandmother. The genealogical fact is a matter of public record. The quotation is not. The line, if Camilla said it, would have been simultaneously a joke, a flirtation, and a piece of personal history offered as introduction. Whether she said it is, we will come back to this. In the Polo Ground version, the meeting is also chaperoned, in spirit if not in fact, by Lord Mountbatten, the prince's great-uncle and self-appointed mentor, who, in Bradford's account, saw Camilla as ideal mistress material. That phrase is Bradford's, and it carries the period's casual brutality about the role available, in the royal household's view, to a woman of Camilla's class, but with Camilla's romantic history. That is version A. Smith's Lawn. 1970. Instant rapport. The horse, the line, the watchful uncle. It is the version most of the public knows. It is also the version with the least direct testimony behind it. Version B. London. The authorized account. The biographer who has stayed closest to Camilla, and who has reported on her with what she describes as the cooperation of friends and intermediaries, is Penny Junor. In Junор's book, The Duchess, The Untold Story, published in 2017, the meeting takes place not in 1970, but in 1971. And it does not take place at Smith's Lawn. In Junor's account, the introduction was arranged privately by Lucia Santa Cruz, who at that point in her life had recently completed a romance of her own with Prince Charles, a relationship that began when both were at Trinity College, Cambridge, and which several of Charles's relatives, including his cousin Lady Elizabeth Anson, would later describe as the prince's first significant love. Lucia had stepped back from that role and decided that Camilla, her new friend, was the right woman for the heir to throw himself at next. Junor records the line Santa Cruz used. She had found, she told the prince, just the girl for him. Junor's reporting situates the introduction at one of Lucia Santa Cruz's social occasions in London. She does not place it at the polo. She does not include the great-grandmother line. What she does include is the texture of what followed. She writes, and this is the language people who knew them at the time tend to use about that early period, that the prince was, from very early in their acquaintance, taken with Camilla in a way that did not feel like an ordinary infatuation. He loved the fact that she smiled with her eyes as well as her mouth, Junor writes, and laughed at the same silly things as he did. He also liked that she was so natural and easy and friendly, not in any way overawed by him, not fawning or sycophantic. In short, he was very taken with her, and after that first meeting he began ringing her up. Source: Penny Junor, The Duchess, The Untold Story, HarperCollins, 2017. That is version B, London, 1971. Introduction by a mutual friend at a social occasion. No horse, no quip. A young prince who began telephoning. Version C, Cundy Street, The Witness's Own Account. The most recent version of the meeting comes not from a biographer's reconstruction, but from one of the people who was there. Lucia Santa Cruz is now in her 80s. She has, over the decades since the relationship became public, given very few interviews. She gave one of them, recently, to Sally Bedell Smith, the American biographer whose previous books on the British royal family include Prince Charles, The Passions and Paradoxes of an Improbable Life, published in 2017. In Bedell Smith's account, published in her Substack newsletter around the time of the May 2023 coronation, under the title Happy and Glorious, the meeting was not in 1970. It was not in 1971. It was in the early summer of 1972, after Charles had returned to Britain from his first Royal Navy training tour. The venue was not Smith's Lawn and not any society address. It was Lucia Santa Cruz's own flat, at the Cundy Street Flats, a low-rise residential block in Pimlico, near Victoria Bus Station, owned by the Duke of Westminster and operated as low-cost housing for family connections, retired royal staff, and friends. The Cundy Street Flats no longer exist as they were. They are being demolished for a luxury development. In Lucia Santa Cruz's own words, given directly to Bedell Smith and quoted as a first-person statement in her dispatch, "The prince was coming for a drink, and I asked her to come up." That is, on the public record, the only first-person account of the moment from a person who was present. It contains no polo ground. It contains no horse. It contains no great-grandmothers and no mistresses of Edward VII. It contains a drink, a flat, and a friend asking a friend to come upstairs. Source: Sally Bedell Smith, Happy and Glorious, published on her Substack, May 2023. The year is the part that matters most. In Bedell Smith's reconstruction, drawing on Santa Cruz's testimony and on the chronology of Charles's Royal Naval Reserve commissioning, the meeting happens nearly 2 years later than the date most of the press has carried. That difference is not a calendar quibble. It changes who Charles was at the moment of the meeting, a recently commissioned 23-year-old naval officer, rather than a freshly invested 21-year-old Prince of Wales. And it changes whether Camilla was, at the time, free of, or already privately reattached to, Andrew Parker Bowles. That is version C, Pimlico. 1972. A drink in a friend's flat on the edge of a London neighborhood that has since been knocked down. The line. There is one element of the meeting that has survived in popular memory more vividly than the meeting itself. My great-grandmother was your great-great-grandfather's mistress, so how about it? It has been quoted in some form in dozens of articles, in most of the major biographies, in the Netflix dramatic reconstruction, The Crown. It is, in the popular imagination, the moment Camilla Shand announced herself to the future king. The historical reference is accurate. Alice Keppel, born in 1868, became the long-term mistress of King Edward VII in the late 1890s and remained so until his death in 1910. Keppel was Camilla's great-grandmother. The genealogical fact is on record. The line itself, the line Camilla is supposed to have spoken to the Prince of Wales at the Polo Ground in the summer of 1970, is on much weaker ground. Camilla herself has, on the rare occasions she has been asked, declined to confirm it. In her authorized biographer Penny Junor's account, the line as conventionally quoted does not appear. In Lucia Santa Cruz's direct testimony to Bedell Smith, the line does not appear. In the most widely cited versions of the Polo Ground account, the line is reported as something Camilla is said to have said, the conditional construction that biographers use when a story is too good to drop and too unsourced to assert in their own voice. Counter-narrative. Some accounts place the joke not in Camilla's mouth at all, but in Lucia Santa Cruz's. In Penny Junor's reporting, Santa Cruz was the one who, at the introduction, poked fun at the historical connection between the two families. In that version, the wit came from the matchmaker. Camilla simply smiled. The line, in other words, may exist primarily because it is too good not to retell. It is, on the present evidence, the kind of historical artifact that has acquired its own life independent of the question of whether it was ever spoken. That is itself a category of historical fact, a quotation made famous by repetition rather than by a witness. What remained unknown? 3 accounts, 3 places, 3 years. One quip whose provenance no one will quite stand behind. What can be said, on the record, with multiple sources behind it? By the early 1970s, Prince Charles and Camilla Shand had been introduced. By the time the prince left for his second naval tour in early 1973, they had developed a private and serious attachment. By the time he returned, Camilla was engaged to Andrew Parker Bowles. They were married on the 4th of July 1973 at the Guards Chapel, Wellington Barracks in London. That much is documented. What is not documented is the moment the rest of this story turns on. We do not have a date the way history is supposed to provide dates. We do not have a venue agreed by all the parties who have written about it. We do not have the line, as quoted, in the testimony of anyone who was present. What we have is the strange shape history takes when a private moment becomes a public one in retrospect. The Polo Ground version is vivid. The London introduction version is documented in print by a respected biographer with access to the family. The Pimlico version comes with the one direct first-person quotation we possess. They are each, in their way, plausible. They cannot all be true together. The choice of which to believe is, for now, the choice of which witness to trust most, and which to set aside. That is, perhaps, what royal history is. Not the moments the cameras caught, but the moments only 3 people saw, and the 3 of them have never quite said the same thing about it. To follow the rest of the early Charles-Camilla story, the Navy years, the Parker-Bowles marriage, and what happened in the gap between them, the next file opens here on the channel.